Hey, all of my canine pals out there. It is, in fact, National Dog Training Month, but it's so many other things too. There seems to be a designation these days for every day of the year. And I happen to notice that yesterday was National Break Your New Year's Resolution Day. Eek! I'm sure that has happened. Maybe it happened weeks ago in many instances. But as the pet safety crusader here, I just have to put out there and say that if you did break a New Year's resolution, I certainly hope it isn't one you made to your pet or for being a better pet parent. So, just try to keep on track with those New Year's resolutions as far as those veterinary visits, those weekly head-to-tail checkups, the training, which we're going to be talking about today, and spending that quality time together with your best friend, because that's what it's all about. Animals bring us so much joy, and we bring them, hopefully, that much joy in return. So the heck with yesterday being National Break Your New Year's Resolution Day. Get back on track. Everybody falls off once in a while. Let's get back on track and make sure we're making it the best year we can for the dogs, cats, and other critters that share our lives together. So, on to dog training. Hey, Scott, nice to see you. Or I guess I should say nice to have you see me. I wish I could see you. Obedience training for our dogs. We talked cats on Monday. And now we're going to talk about dogs, which what we more regularly think of when we're talking about obedience training, but cats can learn a trick or two. And the point is, obedience training teaches our dogs manners. It makes them better members of the family, and it just keeps them safe as well. If you can keep them out of trouble, if you can keep them to stay instead of dashing into traffic, or to leave it instead of getting into poison. A lot of us have had many dogs over the years that we've been lucky enough to share our lives with. And, we probably all come up with our own techniques. But what we have to remember is every dog is a unique individual. And just because a certain method worked for one dog, it may or may not work for other pets in our lives. That said, at different stages of our lives, certain methods may work better or not so much. You have to realize the real job of a dog obedience trainer is to train us, the humans, to train our dogs, because we're the ones that are with our pets day in and day out. The trainer gives us tips and shows us by example and can really set us on the right path. But we're the one that has to practice in small increments of time, 5 or 10 minutes only at the most, and, a couple of times a day, every day, until the cues we give our pet or the commands become rote. But then we don't stop either, and that's why National Train Your Dog Month and National Walk Your Dog Month kind of actually fit well together, because once you're learning the training, you can continue to practice it on your daily walks, or brush up on it. Such an important thing. A lot of us do well watching a video, reading a book, learning from others. But sometimes, it's in our pet's best interest if we do hire a trainer to get us on that right path. And sometimes, we may think it's expensive to do so. Well, they've gone through a lot of, training, trial and error themselves, and they're well worth the money we can pay for them. But do investigate, because again, it's a trainer that you want to have good rapport with your pet, but also good rapport with you, since a trainer is training you to train your dog. And also, even if it is costly, very often people end up saving money by training their pets, because when pets aren't trained and they're left home alone, or they haven't learned their manners, they end up being very destructive and doing a lot of unwanted behaviors that actually then end up for you paying for a carpenter or a plumber, or getting new carpet put in, or buying a new sofa. So in the long run, it really behooves you and your pet to train them and teach them those manners. It also can keep them safe, like I mentioned, out of harm's way, and it keeps them active. I always think a tired dog is a good dog, because if you've exercised him and exercised his mind, he'll settle down then when you need to sit down and do some work or cook dinner or whatever it is you might have. When I was teaching my high school animal care class at the shelter, I would bring in different experts once in a while. Hey, Barbara, I'm glad to see you joined us. And I would bring in different animal experts, and they would talk to the kids, and we would do demonstrations, and then we would try to practice afterwards if it was a topic that we could continue on. And whenever I'd have the trainer, my high school kids were just so amazed how tired the dogs got. It really was exhausting, not so much physically, but mentally, and that just kind of made them chill afterwards because the brain cells have to keep going. You really want to make sure that you are the most interesting thing around when you're training your dog, not some stinky dead creature on the side of the road, or just, you know, all of the smells that are out in the woods, or the food truck that just drove by. You need to be the most interesting thing, and you need to use a happy voice at all times. That's just so very important to me. So no matter whatever method you use to train your pet, I just strongly encourage, highly suggest, demand that you teach with positive reinforcement, patience, and kindness. Now, one of the things we have found out about training dogs is if you go back a few decades, or maybe a little bit more, to Pavlov. And I'm sure you've all heard of him in his classical conditioning in the early 20th century, where dogs learned to associate the ringing of a bell with food. And it got to the point when the bell would ring, they would actually salivate because they knew food was coming next. Well, that's just such an awesome way, you know, to teach a pet something, that if he does something we want, he's going to get something he wants. A lot of people use clicker training to give that same quick signal and then treat as well. And we talked about clicker training a little bit on Monday when we were talking about cats. But I just strongly think, you know, treats and positive reinforcements is one of the best ways to get our pets to do something. You know, we can't give them the rule book. We can't tell them exactly what we want to do. It's very much trial and error, and just kind of, it happens sometimes because they'll do the right behavior, and then we have to be there on the spot to reinforce it with that treat. It was like I was saying with the cat, that when she actually touches your hand, you're not going to shove her head into your hand, but when she actually accidentally touches her nose to your hand, you reinforce if that's what you're trying to teach her to do. So the same thing with our dogs. We can help them along a little bit more. If you are training with a collar and a leash, and you have the collar up high behind the ears, you don't want it around the neck because you don't want to choke them, but you want to have it up high around the ears. As you're teaching the sit command, you lift the leash so that the head comes up, and you gently press down on the behind so the back end of the dog goes down, and you get them to go into that sit position. Generally, when we're teaching a command, we want to make that command elongated. Sit, stay. Because then when we need to bark out a command that's more of a negative or a quicker thing, you know, like leave it, it gives more reinforcement to it. What I wanted to say next, though, about a lot of the treats, or I shouldn't say the treats, the tricks, the commands: sit, stay, come, down, leave it. Those are pretty much the 5 basic ones. I have a dog trainer friend that often refers to sit as please, because the dog is doing something that pleases you when he sits. It's kind of a polite thing for him to do, and getting a dog into a sit is a great way to make him stop an unwanted behavior. If he's jumping up on somebody that's coming in the front door and you put him in a sit, he's stopped that behavior. If you've opened the door and you put your dog into a sit, you've prevented him from dashing out the door. So sit can be used for several things. Heel is generally when we have the dog on our left side, and I think of it as follow the leader. He's just coming along with you wherever you're going and staying on that side. But all the time you're, walking with your pet, sure, give him some time to sniff, but use that watch me command so that he's looking at you. You may have to do that with a treat by bringing it up to your face and having him watch me, but it's so important. For reasons like we were talking, I guess it was a week or two ago, if another dog is suddenly coming your way, if you can get your dog to look at you on command and not make eye contact with that dog, you may have won the battle right there. there may still be more to do, but anything you can do to prevent two dogs from staring at each other will prevent, you know, a fight going on, or at least an unpleasant encounter. So sit is please, heel is follow me, down would also be please. And I told you, I think during the walking your dog session the other day, what I love doing with Haiku is what I call doggy push-ups. I put him into a sit, I usually have a treat in my hand, and then I bring it down to the ground to make him go into a down, and then we come back up to a sit, and down to a down, and up to a sit, and then finally he gets the treat. But it gives him a little exercise, it gives him mental stimulation, and it's something different from just putting him in a sit when we're at a curb before we cross a street or for any other reason. So I enjoy doing those with him too, and I think he does as well. Now, come is so important because there are so many times in our lives we need our pet to come right to us. And, you know, often it's just because we want them to, but sometimes it's really important for a safety matter that he comes when he is called. And for that particular command, well, let me back up a tad. For come, what I recommend doing is training your dog on a long lead, having a 10 or even a 20-foot leash in an area that's safe. And what you do is you let him kind of roam, and then you reel him in as you're doing the come until he learns to do that without being reeled in. But to really teach a very strong recall so that the pet will come, you know, at any time, any place, what I recommend doing is picking a totally unique word, not using come, but using a word it's very unlikely he's going to hear in the course of the day, something you hardly ever utter. I heard somebody uses something like Ariba, or, you know, it could just be, you know, well, you don't want to use a food if it's something you have around home. Haiku's singing right now, if you guys can hear in the background. But pick a very unusual word that you're unlikely to just utter at any other time. And then also pick a treat that your pet normally doesn't get. It could be cut up pieces of hot dog or boiled chicken, some kind of really smelly cheese, but something that's really that'll excite all the senses, the taste and the smell as well for your pet. I also would suggest you keep it in a container when you're doing the training that doesn't rustle. Because like we were just talking about Pavlov and the bell ringing causing the dog to salivate thinking he was getting food, rustling of paper often does that to pets too. So you really want to associate the recall and the reward with the food, but we don't want the rustling or the other noise in there to interfere with what we're trying to get across. But you have your unique word, you're going to bust out a really unusual kind of treat for the pet too, and practice it incrementally. Teach it to them just on a leash on your patio or even in your living room to come to that, you know, come with that word and come with that treat. Then do it from the other side of the house, make him come. Do it in the backyard on leash from 5 feet away, from 20 feet away. You know, have that long leash again, and you do it at different distances and in different locations. I hear so many times, and I've experienced it myself, that when I would go to a training lesson or to a park or in the backyard with one of my dogs, they would do it spot on. It was perfect. And then I'd go to the lesson and, you know, Haiku or Bonsai or one of my dogs wouldn't do a thing right. They get used to doing things in a certain environment. So it's important to train them in different places, and that's why I so like the idea of practicing this training as we take our daily walks, because you can do it in different spots along the walk. Different distractions occur in different places. And remember, you have to be the most interesting thing, but having that unusual, really smelly, and I say smelly, it doesn't have to be bad smelling, but just something that's really enticing to the pet type of treat might really make the difference in that recall. And, you know, life could be at stake for it sometimes. So there are so many methods of training. My pocket guides, the How to Take Care of Your Dog or Puppy, offers quite a few tips here. My Pet Safety Bible, which I hope will be out in another 6 weeks, will have some additional ones as well. But you can go online and watch videos, and I encourage you to do that, because you may see something in somebody's body language or their technique that really is of interest to you. But whatever you choose to do, I just, can't stress enough to do it with kindness, with positive reinforcement, and patience, because pets are learning by our example, and that's just so very important. I do want to mention before I get into something else that, hey, Scott, you were listening while driving. Well, I guess that's okay as long as you're on speaker, huh? And you're not talking to me. I'm so glad to have you tuning in. I can walk and chew gum sometimes, but I won't get on your case for that. The only thing I will is if you're texting while you're walking your dog, because I want you to be in the moment paying attention to him. And I know you are with you superhero there who walks 4 dogs at a time. One thing I want to mention before I forget is please tune in next Tuesday at 3 p.m., same time, same Pet Safety Crusader channel. I'm going to be showing some tools that might be helpful for walking and training your dog. I've met some people from a company called Dig It Collars and Leashes, and they've sent me some samples that I'm going to show to you, and they have such a big heart for animal rescue and animals in need that after we show off some of the products next week, if you choose to get a Valentine gift for your dog anytime over the next couple of weeks or so, they will donate 10% of all the sales using our special little code number to the Gray Muzzle organization, which has a special place in my heart with my love for senior pets. I'm going to go off on a little bit of a tangent here. I kind of was ending with, however you train your pet to do it with kindness and positive reinforcement and patience. And I had an incident happen recently, and I would love other people's takes on this. Somebody that was a friend of the family was actually very unkind to Haiku. And Haiku is fine, and there was no physical damage or anything like that done, but it was a person that just really didn't understand pets. Those of you that know me know I've talked about zoonoia before. In my classes I talk about zoonotic diseases, diseases that we can get from animals that pass between species, rabies, tick-borne diseases, and other things along those lines. But zoonoia is a term that was coined a few years ago, and it's actually the inverse of zoonotics. Zoonoia is the positive health benefits that humans actually get from sharing their lives with animals. A lot of people have kicked the smoking habit because they know secondhand smoke is just as bad for our pets. Having a dog, like we've been talking about all this month, can get you up off the sofa and walking and exercising. There's scientific proof that animals in your lives can lower blood pressure, and that their therapy, they get people that are older or just hermits out of the house, so that they're no longer shut-ins, and get them out meeting people. But there's also scientific proof that children that bond with an animal generally become more empathetic, compassionate human beings. And, I think that's true. Most of my friends have grown up with animals. I have some friends that have grown to love animals in later life. And it took a little bit of a learning curve. And I see the difference in people that didn't have the pleasure and the privilege of growing up around animals. But this particular person didn't. I believe they had a dog as a family pet, but it was in the backyard, and nobody ever thought really about loving it or hugging it or taking it for a walk. And just a long story short, this Haiku was greeting this person and barking his greeting, and the person yelled at him and stared at him and then slammed his hand, I'm not sure if it was down on a table or on the side of his leg. He was frustrated that Haiku was greeting him. And I said, get down, say hello to him, get down on the ground with him, pet him. And the person had no desire to do so. I guess it was beneath him to touch a dog or get down and play with him. And I've just been sort of shell-shocked by this whole experience. Obviously, needless to say, the person wasn't here long, and Haiku is doing fine. And no, I didn't give him a right hook, although it probably was on my mind. But it just made me think about a high school student I had many years ago. he and his twin brother came to my class, and his twin brother lasted one day because he realized that we weren't going to just play with puppies and kittens. He was actually going to have to take tests and write essays and do that whole bit of business. So he was out of there, but the other student, I think, really needed the 5 credits to graduate high school and hung in there. And trust me, I had trouble with him throughout the semester, but I tried to work with him, and he hung in there. And the last day of class, he actually wrote me a note that said something to the effect of, "Mrs. Fleck, I'm glad, I hung in here. I really hope one day I'll do something to save a pet's life, and I'm really going to encourage my friends not to fight dogs." Well, that was priceless, as they say. If you can even reach one person and get them not to do that sort of thing, means the world. So with this incident happening, I'm really going to be on a mission, and especially since this was Martin Luther King's birthday week, and I saw just so many amazing quotes from this man, many that pertain to animals, that it's true, and I'm really understanding some people don't get it, and I guess it's our job out there to help those people get it, and it's not by doing the same things they do through anger or misunderstanding, but really trying to take the time. I'm sure you guys have all heard this quote before. There was a gentleman, philosopher, writer, I believe it was in the 20s, he won a Nobel Peace Prize, Anatole France, who wrote a quote that a person's soul remains unawakened until he's, loved a dog. And it's just so true. Looking in those beautiful brown or green or whatever eyes they have, looking at you adoringly. I know we all think we're being adored, but I think we are, because dogs are just amazing, as are cats and other animals. They're some of the gentlest souls I've ever met. And as Mahatma Gandhi says, a society should be judged by the way it treats its animals. And I just couldn't agree more, because when people aren't kind to animals, they're not kind to people either. And we all know the horrible statistics of people that do terrible things and abuse people often started off abusing animals. So I didn't mean to go off on a whole sad tangent here today, but I would just love feedback, and you can give this to me personally as well. I'm certainly going to be writing a blog on the topic, but I wonder if anybody else has ever encountered somebody that really just doesn't get pets, doesn't understand why, we would spend our time or share our lives with these wonderful creatures, and how you've dealt with it, and if you've been able to turn anybody's mind around. So with that said, I love you all for listening. I know you all love animals and think the world of them, and I think they make me a better human by loving them. And I hope I gave you some training tips today, but thinking about the kindness and the patience just led me elsewhere. So thank you so much for tuning in. If only people could love as unconditionally as dogs. You are absolutely right, Scott. I mean, we're so much more judgmental. Dogs don't carry around the baggage that we do. Sure. Well, and that's an interesting topic, because I was talking to this person about it a little bit, and he was very upset at another dog because that dog didn't understand that he wasn't the man that had previously abused him. He didn't understand how dogs couldn't differentiate between men, because we all know some pets are afraid of men, some pets are afraid of a person in a hat or a hoodie or wearing sunglasses. And it's just, so there is that, but that isn't really a judgment so much as it's, I believe they're basing a reaction to a previous bit of history. So please, keep the comments coming. Anybody that's watching this in replay, I would love for any feedback you have, because I certainly want to put together a really, informative article, blog, piece of information, and I hope we can be the one who makes a difference in the life of an animal by turning some people's minds around and their hearts as well, and helping them to all learn how wonderful these four-legged creatures are that we share our lives with. I hope you have an awesome rest of the week. I'll see hopefully see some of you on Monday at 11 Eastern time here. But do remember to check back with me next Thursday as well, because I'm going to show off some products and we have an opportunity to raise money for the Gray Muzzle organization. 4 paws up for pet safety. Bye-bye for now.